You're listening to the Adventure Sports Podcast. We talk with adventurers from around the globe to give you the inspiration you need to get started in the outdoors or keep moving if you're already there.
Hello and welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. This is Caleb. Now, I know I've been posting quite a few revisited episodes which involve winter and cold and that sort of thing. And that's partially because it's really hot outside, but it's partially just sort of where the wind has taken me, so to speak. And even though this next episode also involves winter and skiing and snow and all that fun stuff, that's not what this episode is primarily about. Rather, what I think this episode encourages us to do or to live is to live a life of joy and positivity, and to dream big, because those big dreams might just come true. And what to do if your dream does come true. What do you do after that? In today's episode, Mason interviews two-time Olympic skier Kaylin Richardson. From the humble 125-foot hill in Minnesota where she mastered the fundamentals of skiing, to representing the United States at the Olympics twice, she has truly lived a life without compromise. And even after retiring from professional skiing at 25, she talks about how pursuing her other interests and other dreams, like being a mom and being featured on Warren Miller films, has continued to bring joy and meaning to her life. I hope you enjoy this episode. Here's Mason. Kaylin Richardson, welcome to the show.
Oh, it's so great to be here, Mason. Thanks for having me.
Where are you coming from today? Where's home for you?
I live in Park City, Utah, and I'm looking out at the snow. I live on the mountainside, a little bit outside Park City, and I grew up in Minnesota, but the mountains are really my happy place. So I feel so lucky that, especially now more than ever, that I get to live in my office and my playground, which is the mountains.
Oh, that's awesome. So winter is already upon Park City.
Yes. It's came early this year and it stuck around, and it's actually been such a blessing, right? Because those shoulder seasons, I love fall. I love the changing of the colors. I love when that Christmas in there, but then there's a couple of weeks where it's just kind of gray and cold and the leaves are gone and I'm just ready for the snow. That amount of time here in Utah was very, very short. It's like the snow, boom, came. And when the snow comes, it's like I get energy. You know, sometimes people get seasonal dissociative disorder or something where they get bummed. I get that in the summertime. When it's really warm, I get summer doldrums where I'm like, it's so hot, I start to wilt. But when it gets cold and the snow comes, you'll see my energy level just spikes, and I'm so excited.
I've honestly never heard someone say it for the summer.
Yeah,
you're like a non-alcoholic beer personality.
Yes,
I
totally am. I absolutely am. Where people are like, "You're kidding, right? You don't really get more excited for winter." And I'm like, "No, I absolutely do." And in the summer, don't get me wrong, so there isn't as much water in Utah. That's the one thing that it doesn't have going for it. And I live in Minnesota with these beautiful lakes, right? So the one nice thing about a super hot, humid summer, which Minnesota has in spades, is that you get to be on the water, and that's amazing. But since we don't have water as much here in Utah, it just gets really hot, and I just kind of get, even my husband's like, "Oh, summer doldrums," so I know when it's happening, so I'll pull myself out of it. But the winter, I even start talking faster, so forgive me because it's winter time. I talk fast anyway, so I'm probably just gonna be like talking a mile a minute because I'm so excited.
That's awesome. Well, you know what's funny is another quick tangent. It's like with so many things canceled in 2020, it keeps hitting me over and over. I don't know if it's just kind of everything is in this kind of postpone mode, or like, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? But nature keeps happening, and winter, seasons keep changing, and it keeps hitting me like, oh yeah, duh, like nature doesn't have to stop. like exactly. The leaves change, the snow comes, that has nothing to do with this. It's refreshing that is still going to happen no matter what, and the fact that it's brings you so much energy is pretty awesome.
It is. And I think you really hit the nail on the head that the one thing that you can count on is Mother Nature, right? That COVID's been happening longer than I think most people would have guessed back in February, right? But time still passes, right? And there's still things to celebrate. Can you imagine just if it just stayed the same and all of a sudden you look at your watch and you think, oh, 8 months have passed and nothing's really changed? At least the seasons have changed. Sometimes I think about people in Southern California, which is lovely, like 75 degrees and sunny. That's not a bad place to live, bad climate, but I love the way that the seasons change. It invigorates me.
Growing up, you grew up in Minnesota, and I know you kind of just mentioned that, but what was the skiing culture like there? What were kind of the goals, and you obviously fell in love with it there, but were you pushed to, or did you just kind of find it yourself?
You make a very good point. So Minnesota, I have so much Minnesota pride. I'd say Minnesotans, we have sneaky state pride. So if anyone from Minnesota is listening to this, they will completely back me up where my husband's from Washington State, and he's always like, Texas, people love it. And then you'll meet Vermonters where they're quiet, but they're very proud. He's like, Minnesota's sneaky because Minnesota nice is the thing, but we are really, really proud about being from Minnesota. So yes, Minnesota definitely has seasons, and you're right. It gets very cold and very hot. And we do have springtime and we have a beautiful fall, but yes, we're definitely known for the extremes on when it comes to seasons. But there are no mountains, so people are always surprised when I come from Minnesota. And a lot of really great alpine skiers have come from Minnesota, but we really don't have mountains. We have little hills, but we have lots of ski areas. So you get a lot of runs. And so there was this little ski area. I grew up right in the Twin Cities, right outside Minneapolis, and my family sort of fell into ski racing serendipitously. When you look at the bios of a lot of U.S. ski team athletes, you'll see that they come from a pedigree, whether their parents were U.S. ski teamers or pro skiers or ski patrol or were just within the industry. I'd say that more often than not, that's what you'll find. That was not my family. I'm not trying to discredit my family. We're plenty athletic, but ski racing was not on our radar. My dad loved to ski recreationally. And so that's what we went on one ski trip every season. And I have two older brothers, and my parents kind of said, oh, ski racing is a varsity sport at my public high school. So that when we kind of aged out of this community free skiing program called Ski Jammers, they looked up that there was Team Gilboa, which is the ski team about 10 minutes from where I grew up on this teeny hill called Highland Hills. That's 175 foot vertical. It is very, very small.
Wow.
Yeah. Like the good way of me explaining how small it is that in the summertime, it's a driving range and decent golfers will drive right over the hill. And that's not an exaggeration. I've seen it multiple times. So you don't need a lot. It just like repetition. So we just started ski racing, and I was a huge tag along. And so when my brother started doing it within a year, I followed suit, and I just kind of took to it right away. I loved the feeling of freedom. I think that anyone that skied, whether they're the most novice or the most advanced, can say that what you feel is the same. It doesn't matter how good you are, but when you get a little bit of that taste of that exhilaration and the wind in your face and maybe a little bit of adrenaline, it's kind of addictive.
I just love hearing folks aspire to such a level you have coming from the places, somewhere like Minnesota where it isn't a Colorado or a Utah or a California or even a Vermont. It's lesser known. What was your talent? I don't know, pretty evident early on, or was it? You know what I mean? Like, who are you comparing yourself to in that area?
Oh yeah, so I kind of was able to compare myself to the very best. So Lindsey Vonn, who kind of transcends ski racing, which is, I could say she's a household name. Now I'm going to say that. I'm going to claim that for her. She and I are the same age, and she grew up at Buck Hill, which is only about 35 minutes from where I grew up, right outside the Twin Cities in a place called Burnsville. Just they were on the east side of the Twin Cities, and we were on the west side. That's really all that it comes down to. And Lindsay and I are the same age, and so she was a prodigy. Like, I remember when I was 9 years old watching her ski race and being like, wow. I was not a prodigy. I was plenty athletic. I think that definitely I had a decent amount of success when I was little, but I wasn't. I don't think anyone would have looked at me as a 9 or 10-year-old and been like, oh, she's Olympic bound. That wasn't happening. With Lindsay, that definitely was happening, where people are like, well, if she continues on this trajectory, she'll be the most winningest female ski racer in history, which she is. But for me, it was more that, like, she's pretty good. She has some promise. Like, she works hard. And I definitely, from a very young age, Team Gilboa, a big part of the ethos of the program is just hard work, just putting it in, and a lot of character building. And that really supported who I was and who I am, really. So yeah, it was just about putting in the time. And I was always bigger for my age and tall and fairly athletic. So I just kept moving up the ranks. And just like any sport, you continue to move up the ranks. You race regionally, and then sort of in your whole division of the Central, and Central would kind of go with the Rocky Mountains. So we'd go to Colorado for races. And then I made the national junior team. They called it the development team at the end of my freshman year of high school. So sophomore, junior, and senior year, I was racing with the US ski team at that time.
When were the Olympics in your sights? How early on would you say?
Yeah, definitely. So even when I first made the national junior team, I was still a bit of an underdog, where I think that there was a couple things that went into it. The two coaches at the time were both from Minnesota originally, which was amazing, John Ethan and Todd Brickson. Or they'd spent time in the Midwest, so they knew where I hailed from, where they said, wow, this girl has a lot of talent, and she's really trained on teeny tiny hills. She hasn't had big mountainous training, which definitely does help. And so that helped. But they also saw how coordinated I was off the hill, and how hard it's funny to say that you're a hard worker, because it just sounds like I could see people rolling their eyes at home being like, oh, wow, she really thinks she's a big deal. But it's true. I had to work hard, because it wasn't like it always came natural. So I think that helped. But it was my, long story short, my senior year of high school, I had a breakthrough. I changed some of my technique, and that really made me a lot faster that year. And that year was when I really kind of looked. So that was 2003. And I was thinking the 2006 Olympics, we're in 3 years. And because I went from the junior team to the B team, so I kind of hopscotched over the C team, since there's the A, B, C, and the development team, the D team. So that was my biggest breakthrough year. And at the end of when I graduated from high school, I said, I think that the Torino Olympics, the 2006 Olympics, are within range. And so I started to dedicate myself and really look to that as that was the goal that I was pushing towards.
What did it feel like to make the Olympics? Is it a moment that you're approved? Is it, you know what I mean? Is it like this letter in the mail? Like, what you obviously have to qualify. Like, what was that like?
So every sport's different. Ski racing is interesting because we don't have like a time trials. It's not like track and field or swimming where there's an Olympic trials. It is cumulative results from about 6 months before the games. There is a qualifying period. And so it's basically the months before the Olympics. So it's, the races start a bit in October. So the races in October, November, December, January, and into mid-January. The cutoff's like, I think, the second or third week of January. So how you do in those races will dictate if you make the games. But then there is certain criteria that if you won a World Cup the year before, the season before, and then did certainly well during that criteria time, then that will help like move you in ranks, because there's a lot that can occur in that kind of period of time. And if you were handily winning World Cups the year before, and then maybe we're making like top tens and someone hadn't won, there's all different. I haven't actually looked at it that closely because I wasn't winning World Cups. I knew what I needed to do to make it. So I would say that season, those couple months before an Olympics, are very, very intense. They just are, because there's only so many races where it counts to make the Olympics. And you might have had the best season of your life the year before, but if you're not necessarily getting those results a couple months before they name the team, it doesn't matter. So and also it's funny because it's a team sport in some ways, but it's not. It's a completely individual sport, but you travel as a team. So I didn't say that very well. Like, we're on the US ski team, but it's an individual sport.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that you're basically like my best friends in the world that I travel with, that I room with, that are basically like sisters, they become your largest competition to get an Olympic berth. And that's also something that's very hard to navigate, because in a perfect world, we'd all go, because my teammates worked really hard. I also worked hard, but there were many of them that were just as deserving. Right. And that's heartbreaking. And it's tough to work through, but luckily I was able to make it 2 times in my career, and I'm so lucky. And also I did a lot of events, which I definitely think was helpful. But once they have these meetings, and that they're going to tell you whether you made it or not. And when they tell you that you kind of know. So when, especially for Torino, I was pretty sure that the results I had were going to put me on for the combined, which is downhill and slalom together, which are the two opposite ends of the spectrum, the fastest event in alpine ski racing, and then the most technical. But still, when they tell you, because I wasn't a shoo-in, it's just this flood of emotions. Like, you're overwhelmed. When I made it in 2010, I burst into tears. But when I made it in 2006, I think I just was super giddy. It's a really amazing feeling.
That's so cool. So cool. So after, representing the US in a couple different Olympics, you're a veteran in a lot of ways, lots of experience. What can you tell folks like literally the 99.9% of us that'll never experience that? some maybe some highs of being an Olympic athlete and maybe also some misconceptions about what it's really like.
Yeah, I'd say that for me, the high was kind of, since now the listeners are a little bit familiar with my background, because I wasn't a phenom, just making the Olympics was so big to me. When I was a little girl, because ski racing wasn't on my family's radar, it's not like I was drawing myself on the top of a podium holding a pair of skis. It was more but the Olympics was something that I always was aware of and I always loved. So just to be on that team was like, it sounds so cheesy. This is where you can roll your eyes, Mason. It was like my gold medal being on that team. And I'll tell you what, walking into that opening ceremonies, it is so incredible. It's electric. The energy is unlike anything I'll ever experience again in my life. Because this is how I explain it to people, is that in the opening ceremonies, when you see the Parade of Nations, every single athlete there, they wouldn't want to be anywhere else in the world. And there are very few events you can go to where there are thousands of people and none of them would choose to be anywhere else. You just don't find that, right? Where there'll be a handful of people that are like, I really would rather, I'd rather be in Fiji, like who wouldn't? But when you've sacrificed and you've worked so hard the last 4 years, the last decade, your whole entire life to be at that opening ceremonies and to represent your country and to compete for medals, pretty much every single person would be like, yeah, there's no, you couldn't put me anywhere else on the planet that I'd rather be. And that's really, really special. And then I think the other thing that's kind of surprising, well, to add on to the positives of being an Olympian, also the Olympics transcend sport, where right after I retired from racing at the end of the 2010 winter, I went to Africa for 6.5 weeks and was volunteering for a wildlife conservation organization. It was a totally different type of adventure. It was amazing. But I was talking to kids that for them to wrap their heads around skiing is like, that is such a stretch, but they'd never even seen snow. So I was trying to tell them, and they spoke English fairly well, but I was trying to explain to them what I did as a ski racer, that I was a professional skier. But then when I said I was an Olympian, there was this light bulb that went off and there was this connection because, of course, where they're from in South Africa, they knew what the Olympics were, and they had national heroes that were Olympians, and probably more the summer variety, but that meant something to them. And it was so cool to be able to share that, because I don't even know if they, at the end of our conversation, if they had a better idea of what skiing was, but they looked at me and they're like, you went to the Olympics. That's so cool. And kind of the same sort of questions, like, what's it like? And, I could at least take them on that journey a little bit with me. And then on the negative point, being a pro athlete is awesome. And this is not a complaint in any way, shape, or form, but it can be very lonely, especially being in an individual sport. It can be very lonely, especially when you're not skiing well. And in some ways that can make you very self-reliant and also give you a lot of perspective. But I think that sometimes people are very quick to criticize or ridicule, especially those at the top, right? The very top of their sport in individual sports. But that's a really lonely place to be in. And I can even say I had a little taste of that. I wouldn't say I was ever at the tippity top, but I was able to witness a lot of those that were, and that can be a really lonely spot. And I think that sometimes people forget that, especially when someone doesn't perform and they were expected to. I think especially in the American media, they're very quick to say, oh, they failed. And I was like, no, they didn't fail. They got third, or, they got top 10. It's just right. Funny how we are in the US. We're such a winning mentality sort of country.
That's so interesting about the concept of the Olympics. I don't know probably many sports that are even in the Olympics. Like if you told me the name of the sport, I'm like, I don't know it. But if you told me you were an Olympian, at the very least, what that says or what that illustrates to anyone around the world is that you're at least absolutely excellent at what you do, which is pretty cool. You know what I mean? Like it says you are the best of the best at that thing. It's so much so that your country is willing to allow you to represent them to do that anywhere in the world. So
yeah, it's such a gift. It really is a gift. And I mean, in Park City, I swear that you could throw a rock and you'll hit an Olympian. There are a lot of Olympians in Park City. But I will say that I've definitely met people that sometimes I forget, right? Where I'll be traveling around the country or around the world. And when people, like, I don't have the Olympic rings tattooed, and nothing against that. There's nothing on me that would like, you'll see, like, I'll see people, every once in a while that have the Olympic rings tattooed on them. And I'm like, oh, they're an Olympian. Like, it's like a badge of honor. I chose not to do that. And that's just me, but I don't have anything that necessarily people would be like, oh, she's an Olympian. But when they find out, a lot of people are like, oh, I've never met an Olympian before. And I can remember being a kid, and it was a big deal to meet an Olympian like that. That was, and I'm still so humbled because, like I said, I know so many athletes that are so deserving, right? But it really comes down to, making it happen right before you qualify, whatever sport you're in, whether it's a trials or it's an actual qualifying period. And I would love that for so many more people, because I've seen teammates and friends where when you've been an elite athlete and you've been on a national team, pretty much the first question you'll get from people is like, oh, are you an Olympian? And I'm so blessed that I could say, yeah, I went twice, which is really awesome. But I've seen athletes that have sacrificed and worked so hard, and they're like, well, no, I didn't. And I always get sad for them. I don't know how to be a downer. It just, sometimes I'm just like, I wish more, I guess it wouldn't be as big of a deal if more people went, but
right.
I do. I do
easy,
sometimes.
Everybody do it.
Yeah, exactly.
That is too funny that there's so many around you. There's not, that's definitely not everywhere in the country.
No, this is like an epicenter, and also it's where the Olympics were held. So I think that there's also an element where we have all the training facilities. So of course, Olympians will sort of end up settling here.
So at the age of 25, you retired from the competitive side of what you were doing from the Olympics. What did it feel like to retire at pretty young age from what you were doing, or from knowing that it was going to be competitive, and also kind of what was on your radar at that point?
Totally. So it actually, I think a lot of people were really surprised that I retired in 2010, because 25 for the level I was skiing at, that was pretty young, and I was still skiing relatively fast. Obviously I'd made the Olympics that year, but I knew in my heart of hearts that I didn't want it enough anymore. And for me to continue to ski for 2, 3, 4 more years, another Olympic cycle, maybe I could have still had the same amount of success, but I saw what it took to get to that highest echelon, top 5s, top 3s. And I just didn't have the desire. And for me, it would have been a compromise to continue to ski race, to continue to be on the ski, to try to ski World Cup, because it was familiar, right? But the life of a ski racer is awesome. And I am so grateful for what the US ski team made possible for me in my career. But also I knew what that looked like. I'd been on the ski team for about 10 years at that point. And, I knew what it felt like to be really successful, and I knew what it felt like to be not very fast. And I just wanted new experiences, and I still wanted to ski. I still had tons of passion for skiing. So what I did is I retired and I hung up my race boards, but I always was curious about big mountain and backcountry skiing, and also, oddly enough, broadcasting. So there were other things I wanted to pursue, other talents I wanted to try out, and I wanted to stretch myself in other ways, because I ticked that off. Like, the Olympics were my big goal, and I didn't feel like I really had left anything that I personally wanted to accomplish, where I think other people were surprised, where they're like, you still have more you could do. But I was like, no, but for me, that's what I wanted. I accomplished what I set out to do, basically. So I took a big departure. I moved to LA and Utah. I split my time between Los Angeles, which is so weird because I never thought that I would really know Los Angeles, but I actually do now. And I lived in LA for about 2 years, and then I'd spend my winters still in Utah. And I sort of started to ski more powder, get a little more radical. Through a couple of different happy events, I got my first Warren Miller movie. And then I ended up moving to Park City because I miss the mountains. Like, Los Angeles has its purpose, and there's some awesome parts, and you find your people, but I really miss the mountains. So since 2012, Utah's been home. I always say that I am a Utah local, Minnesota native, because that Minnesota pride, I still really hold it. Even though my mom would joke, she's like, do you think you'll ever move back to Minnesota? She'll ask me wistfully, and I'll go, no. But I love going back. Sometimes
it is better to keep it as a treat to have, to visit versus being there all the time.
Totally. And I always tell people they can have more than one home. Like Utah's definitely home, but Minnesota's still totally home. I think that it's funny. I've had people challenge me and they're like, no, you can only have one home. And I always say, says who? Like, who made you the Lord and master of who has whose home?
And so it sounds like after the Olympics, maybe you had more fun.
Oh, totally. Totally. I would say that it can get, I don't want to say the word old, but it is to see your sort of, for better or worse, your self-worth on a score, not a scoreboard, but like a time. Like ski racing is very, very objective, where it's, if you're fast, you're fast. If you're slow, you're slow. Like there's no, thank goodness I wasn't in a judge sport. I watch judge sports and it drives me nuts because I'll watch them and I'm like, they were better, but obviously I'm not a judge. And a lot of times I don't know sports, but it was so much fun to take, we call them the poles that are up when you're downhill alpine skiing, like to take the poles off the mountain and be able to totally express myself on a mountainside and ski wherever I wanted to ski. And the winter after I retired from racing, which, let's be honest, retiring from ski racing when you're 25, it's a euphemism for quitting. So I quit ski racing, but luckily when you're an elite athlete and you're an Olympian, you can just say, I retired. And people are like, oh, how old were you when you retired? When you say 25, they're like, wow, you did really well. And I'm like, no, I still had to work. I just was done with ski racing. But what was great about it is that obviously from the many years of building up my technique, that really served me well in the big mountains, because I could ski very fast and be really comfortable. And I could ski very technical terrain and be very comfortable. And also I can hustle, getting sponsors, making opportunities happen, just learning from the adversity of being an elite athlete in ski racing is that, someone says no, if you keep asking, at some point, someone else will say yes.
It's persistence.
Yes,
an Olympian.
Exactly.
There
yes.
you go.
Definitely.
So speaking of that, and speaking of moving into other areas of your career, what attracted you to athletic brewing? How did you get involved with us?
Well, like anything, like good people find good people. So I have a friend, Adam, that knew some people at Athletic, and Adam and I know each other for years. And he just kind of said to me in passing a couple of years ago, where he's like, hey, my friend's starting this non-alcoholic brewing company, and I think that you'd be really into it. And I remember at the time being like, oh my gosh, definitely want to hear more about it. But then I think another year or two or year and a half passed. And then Adam wrote me another email, or maybe I reached back out and was like, hey, what's that all about? And he connected me with Bill and some other people within Athletic. And I just love the mentality of it. And I'll say that, especially when I was an athlete, I'd watch athletes work so hard, especially in the off season during the spring and summer, where we'd be in the weight room and really trying to get as much power and strength during those times off snow so that we could maintain and build on it when we were on snow. Because in ski racing, we're talking about hundredths of a second, which is less than the blink of an eye. That could be the difference between, being in the Olympics or not, or getting a gold medal, or actually, let's say getting third and fourth. Like that's the worst. Like, oh man, people that get fourth in Olympics.
Jeez.
That's not fun. They've actually done studies, mental studies about it, that getting fourth is the hardest by far, or silver. But even the people that get silver, I'm like, you still got a medal. But I mean, people always say first loser, which I've never been into. But Anyway, I digress. What I'm saying is that when I got hooked up with Athletic, I checked out the website, and it's just absolutely everything Athletic does is the highest quality. And I'll have to say that even though I like to joke I'm a mediocre Olympian, which, let's be honest, I am, but I do love excellence. So when I saw that, I was like, okay, if their beer tastes as good as the people that are involved, the production, the graphics, I'm like, there's something to this. And then when I tried the beer, I was hooked. I was like, this is delicious. And wow, I'm going in circles. But going back to when I would train, I'd see people work really, really hard and then go out and party really hard. And it's like they would take one step back to take two steps forward. And to me, that never made sense. So I loved the ritual of having drinks after a big workout or a soccer game or whatever, but I never loved the way alcohol made me feel. And especially the morning after, even if and I'm not even talking about being drunk, I'm just saying drinking a little bit of alcohol, it's not good for you, right? So you'd wake up and I'd be a little groggy or not as clear. And I would never say that I'm like an Adonis and I'm like, my body is a temple. I love sugar, for instance, and that's terrible for you. But at the same point, I do like to feel good. And the nice thing about athletic brewing is I get all the goodness from beer without any of the parts that I was not thrilled about. And I think that's basically what athletic brewing is all about. So I'd say that when I met them and we all chatted, it was just like, it was just a little match made in heaven.
You mentioned so many good things there. And I will say, I know Olympians drink us just because you're right. The difference between a lot of times between like the trajectory of being a household name and then being a relative, someone, nobody in a lot of ways, as harsh as that sounds, can be, the difference in your diet or the difference in a little bit of training. Especially at that level where you said, tenths of a second or milliseconds make all the difference.
Totally. Like the lesson of futility where you're like, because there definitely were times where I'm saying like 400ths from a result I really needed.
Mm-hmm.
And 400ths of a second, like in your life, that's nothing. So there'd be this push and pull where you don't want to discredit how hard you've been working. And I mentor a couple of young athletes where what I always tell them is I say, you know what? It matters, but it means nothing, which I know sounds like a huge oxymoron. And what I just tell them I was like, when you don't reach your goals and you've worked really hard, it is okay to grieve that. Like that is natural. You need to go through that because you're disappointed. But remember at the end of the day, and this is true for basically any sport, because sports are recreation, right? And they're entertainment and they build character and there are lots of different things, but they're not the end all and be all. There's so much more to life. And especially for young athletes that don't have necessarily the life experience to be able to grapple with some of these huge disappointments, I always tell them it really matters. And I'm not saying it doesn't, but it means nothing. And I think that for some athletes that really speaks to them and some it doesn't, but I do make a point of always saying that to them because I know that if someone had told that to me, because the mental part of ski racing was always by far the hardest for me. I put a lot of pressure on myself. And I think that it handicapped me in a huge way where if I just had that mentality when I was like 14, 15, 16 years old and was able to really internalize that at a young age, I think I would have been able to do more as a mature elite athlete. Just if I would have allowed myself to really to understand that it mattered a lot and it was okay to really care, but it also to be able to be like, this is fine. It's not a big deal. Like shake it off. Cause I was not great at that when I was a younger athlete.
Well, I'm glad you're able to use that to instill and to mentor these athletes and also, one day instill in your daughter.
Yeah.
You're a mom now. And so congratulations. How has that experience been and changed you?
Oh, it's amazing. So she is 5 months. So she's not fresh out of the oven. But she's still warm. You don't have to the butter would still melt if you put it. Right. It's just been amazing. I think that I will totally admit there was a little bit of trepidation before becoming a mom because being an elite athlete is a super selfish existence. You get to train, everything's about you. And it's true. And sometimes I would struggle with that where I'm like, people would be like, oh my gosh, it's so great. You give people joy. I'm like, are you kidding? I'm sliding down hills on 2 wooden boards. There are people that are heroes. I never thought I was really that, but we don't need to get into that. But man, when Holly was born, it's it is just so awesome. Man, I would never tell someone to have a child unless they're really ready and they're with the right person, because that makes it so much better. But I am endlessly fascinated. I'm delighted. She makes me want to do more and be better. So there's this interesting push and pull of I still want to push my boundaries as an athlete. But at the same time, I want to take her along. I don't want to miss anything. So it's this balance, right? But I'll just tell you, it's unlike anything. And not to say that I wouldn't feel fulfilled or complete not being a mom, because I still would have had an amazing life. And I have plenty of friends that have no intention of having kids. And I think that's awesome. The world definitely doesn't need more people. But I feel so lucky that she's in my life, and it's just so great. She's just so great. It's just fun. And I think that my biggest adventure will just to see her develop and try to help sort of cultivate who she is. Cause every day a little bit more of her personality is unveiled. And that is just so fun to witness.
It is. Wow. That is so cool. So cool. So I'd love to I'd love to get into some rapid fire questions. It's 5 or 6 questions we ask. You don't have to do 1-word answers. It can be a sentence or two. So bringing it back to powder days in your career and the Olympics, what would you say your favorite peak or high or achievement was in your Olympic career or skiing career in general?
I mean, in my skiing career, the 2 Olympics definitely I'm super proud of, and that they were just amazing experiences. And then beyond that, like being in 8 Warren Miller movies, to a lesser extent, obviously, but within like the skiing world in the United States, there are a lot of people that look forward to those movies every year. And to be able to be a part of that legacy and to share that joy is so much fun. And I really feel lucky that I'm able to do that, and that I know the people, and that's become like kind of like a second family. And then also just being able to live the life I choose, right? Where I've been able to carve out this lifestyle where I get to do these amazing things and take people along on my adventures. And I'm really proud of that. And also I really, really feel lucky that I've been able to do that, because a lot of things fell into place, and it was hard work, but also it was just good luck too.
Do you have a life motto or something you tell yourself pretty often?
Mason, I absolutely do.
Oh,
I'm a
sweet.
big believer in mantras and just like having a thing. And I found this when I was 19 years old. So it's been like for a long, long time. I was in Austria, and I was filling out a card for Vocal, my sponsor at the time, in a very, very Austrian place. And they asked my life philosophy, and it just came to me, and it was laugh often. It's short and sweet, but there's a lot more to it, where if you can laugh every day, like life's pretty good. Like you've been making good choices and you've got the right priorities.
Great motto. I really like that. Short, sweet, simple, and
Yeah.
you do that, it's life-changing. It honestly is,
Yes.
to laugh. So what would you say you're most curious about right now outside of skiing?
Ooh, you know what? I'd say writing. It's funny because I've never written a book or anything. Like I've always had the aspiration to, but it's super hard. Like I have no doubt, like friends that have written books and they're like, Kaylin, it's the hardest thing I've ever done. Like I completely agree with them. But I really enjoy it, and I enjoy speaking. So, but I don't know if people would really want to listen, but I think that it'd be fun to even if it was just for me, for something that Holly would have to read later in life, because, as your brain fills up with memories and obligations and like all kinds of things, I'd love to have something that she could read of, especially her early life. So I'm curious about writing, and I'm also curious about the future of our country. And that's not even political. It's just, it seems like we're at a very, pivotal point in history. Let's put it that way. And curious maybe isn't the right word. I think maybe concerned is also a word, but I do have faith in humanity that, that we have enough ingenuity to get us out of the climate change crisis and all these different things. And my hope and a lot of the work that I do is hopefully that we'll look back and be like 2020 was a turning point.
I'd say we're probably mostly optimistic here too at Athletic, and I think we have what it takes to turn just about anything around. And when you sell non-alcoholic beer all day for a living, you tend to think pretty big audacious goals are doable. So
Totally.
It totally makes sense. And as an Olympian, other things are more achievable because of those things you've already seen. So that's awesome. What is, speaking of that, what is your biggest goal not yet achieved?
Biggest goal not yet achieved. That's a really hard one, because I have like little goals. Like I want it to be like a big meaty one, right? I guess like maybe writing a book would be a goal that I have that I don't know if I'll ever achieve that one. And I do feel like it's a bit of a narcissistic endeavor to feel like what I would write, people would want to read. But then in the mountains, I mean, there's plenty of mountain peaks. Like I'd love to get to the Himalaya. There's all those different things, but it's funny. It's not like a goal. They're like intentions where I'm like, I would love to do that, but it's not like I've set it out. And it's funny. I'm 36. It's not like I'm like, oh, I've done everything in life. Like it's all gravy. That's not the way I look at it at all.
Right.
It's just, you know what? I guess it's one of those things where what I'm doing right now in skiing as a pro athlete, I really enjoyed. And now trying to balance it as a new mom, I guess I'm kind of looking for like my next big endeavor and what that will look like, whether it's business or it's in athletics, or I try to transition into a new part of skiing and becoming more of a mountaineer. I don't know. That's, you know what, I'll to be continued. You'll have to have me back on the podcast, and I'll fill you in.
And when you achieve it, we'll have you back on. That's and it might be the new parent thing. I know for us, my wife and I have talked about that a lot in the last year. All right, so the last question, and to kind of wrap it all up, what does it mean to you, and how do you live without compromise?
To live without compromise is to unabashedly be yourself. I think that one of the biggest problems in our world is that there are so few people that have enough courage to really be themselves. And that makes me sad for them because they are limiting their happiness in a huge way. So if there's one thing I could inspire people, whether it's as a pro athlete, a writer, a skier, a mother, is that what really is inside of you, like that is beautiful and relevant and worth celebrating.
That's awesome. Well, Kaylin, thank you so much for joining us on Without Compromise, for sharing some wisdom, sharing some of your experiences, your joy. You seem like just such a happy person. It's great. It's great talking to people who are happy this year. I mean, it's hard to come by. So yeah, thanks for joining us, and thanks for being a part of the Athletic Brewing community. We love having you part of the team, and yeah, it's really cool to talk to folks like you every other week. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Mason, and to all those listening. Just keep on keeping on, right? That things will get better. And I think that you're right, Mason. There are a lot of people that are struggling right now. And that is kind of like what I tell those kids that I mentor. It matters, but it means nothing because time will heal and we'll get through this. And I think positivity is a huge part of that. And Athletic Brewing is all about that. So it is my privilege to be a part of it. So thanks.
Awesome. All right. Well, cool. We'll have a great day and enjoy the winter, enjoy the snow, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to this show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.